Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I am Joey Calvo. Before we get started with our guest today, I have an announcement to make. This is unbeknownst to the guest because it just came into my mind just now. When this airs on PhillyCAM TV, the podcast is going to have a website to where now you'll be able to find out who will be coming up on the podcast, as well as any support of any kind that's coming up. If there's any live events, or if you want to support the podcast, or if you want to shop the merchandise website. I'm gonna have one website that's gonna link them all, plus these podcasts that you can subscribe to at this point. And so more details will be coming out soon in reference to that. If you do want to support the podcast, on the bottom on the ticker, there is a GoFundMe campaign website. You can go there, and all support helps the podcast. We started the expansion with PhillyCAM TV. We are starting the process with hopefully by the time this airs, this will be also eventually on WPPM LP radio. But my goal is also to get it out into different other markets like Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, LA, Seattle, Dallas, etc. So if you want to help out, you have the GoFundMe campaign is at the bottom of the ticker. And so today, our guest, and thank you very much to our guest for coming on and being patient for an extra moment, because like I said, this was just thrown at him. He didn't know it. We have Steven Kubacki, and he came out with a recent coming-of-age memoir, The Disappearance, Conspiracy, Revolution, and Revelation, The Extraordinary Disappearance of Steven Kubacki. So, Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, who is Steven Kubacki? Let's get to the point up to where, we're talking about with the book.
Okay. What do you mean? Who is Steven Kubacki? It's kind of a tough question. Like, who is anybody?
Yeah.
Depends when you want to, what time period you want to talk about me. I mean, right now,
up to when you get to the book.
Oh, up to when I get to the book. Well, I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been practicing for 35 years. I was also a professor for 11 years at different universities. I've had to reinvent myself many times, and I decided a few years ago to work on this book about my disappearance, which happened in my early mid-20s, and I disappeared for 15 months to basically start a revolution, and the memoir is all about that. And why did I do it now? I'm almost 72. I decided it was time to get the story out because I think it's pretty relevant to kind of what's going on in the world politically, economically, socially, because during those times in the late 70s was, it's pretty turbulent time after the Vietnam War, and lots was going on, kind of very similar today, but you might say today is even worse than it was back then. So I was hoping that this book might inspire people, might get people to think about kind of what they can do to change the world and make the world a better place.
Okay. And so you mentioned that this book is 45 years of your life.
No. I wrote it. This is 47 years after the event. That's when I wrote it.
47 years after the event. Okay.
Yeah, right. So the event is in 1978. That's when it starts. And
let's go into the book then.
Okay.
And so go ahead and start, because you just started, what it's about.
Okay. Well, the book is about me and my co-conspirators. There was 4 of us, and we were, young college students, and we wanted to change the world. We wanted, make the world different. And we just didn't see any way of doing it other than creating a conspiracy in which I would disappear for 15 months. And I would start maybe you might call it a revolutionary force and learn to become revolutionary. And the rest of them, the other three, would start developing their powers and skills in in business, politics, and in theology, in religion. We call ourselves the Nihilistic Revolutionary Front. Nihilism comes from a book by A.E. Van Vogt called The Voyage of the Space Beagle. Nihilism is really about kind of people who kind of look at the assumptions and understand kind of various sciences, humanities, and kind of integrate things and think outside the box. Kind of like a Renaissance person. So we got together and we decided to create two arms of our politics, of our so-called revolution we wanted to start. One was the right arm, and the right arm was to be composed of people who would try to amass power and influence in politics, in business, and in religion. And then the left arm, which I was to go underground and gather people to try to change the corporate system, the economic system, political system. We wanted to democratize everything. We wanted to eliminate authoritarianism. And so, we're pretty idealistic. We're young men, in our early 20s. And we didn't want to get co-opted by the system. We felt that if we didn't do this, we would just kind of both all go our own way and soon be absorbed into the system. And not that we couldn't do anything good, but that we wouldn't do anything that would dramatically change things. So that was the belief set way back then that we had. It was in my 20s. And so that's what we did.
Okay. And so why did it take so long to want to write the book?
It took so long because I didn't want to be defined by my experience. So after 15 months, I reemerged for a variety of different reasons we can get into. In order to protect myself and my co-conspirators, I feigned amnesia. I didn't really have amnesia, but it was the only way to protect myself and my co-conspirators. Because I disappeared on the ice of Lake Michigan. There were search parties and everything, and we wanted to avoid any kind of legal entanglement of any sort. I did anyways. They did. So I wanted to protect them, of course, myself too. And I didn't want to be defined by this event. After I reemerged, my family was very happy to see me again. They thought I was dead, except for my mother, who actually had detectives trying to find me while I was underground. And I even had various movie studios, send me contracts and stuff to start, have a movie or something like that. But I declined them. I didn't want to be defined by this event. And so then I went on to reinvent myself differently.
Okay. All right. So so explain the reinvention.
Yeah, the reinvention was after I reemerged. I kind of worked at some menial jobs at like 7-Elevens, and eventually got a job I'm from Massachusetts, in Boston. I was working for a money market fund, and I was almost doing the opposite of what our whole revolution was about. It's kind of paradoxical. Anyways, I was there trying to fit in, and my manager one day took me aside and said, "Steve, you're real smart, et cetera, but you're not going to go anywhere. We can tell that, you just don't fit in, no matter whether you wear a nice 3-piece suit or not." And so I thanked her, and then I quit. I left the money market fund, went back to school, thought I'd go back into trying engineering, and eventually got into a German graduate school that led then to getting a master's in linguistics. And I wanted to travel the world, and that kind of was reinventing myself. And then eventually, after a year in Saudi Arabia, working for a paramilitary organization called Vanel Corporation. It's another whole story, living in Saudi. I came back, finished my master's in linguistics at Ohio University, and then was accepted into a PhD program in clinical psychology at the University of New Mexico and became a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
And also went through Dartmouth Medical School and had a Fulbright in Germany. So.
Okay, so you did you tried to be a radical, attempted to be a radical, and then emerged, reinvented yourself, and now into a clinical psychologist. And so during that time, did you ever have, and you just mentioned, like you said, studios came out to you and said, hey, we want to do your story.
Right.
But you didn't feel comfortable enough, wanting to expose yourself for that.
Yeah.
But my question to that, I would say, besides that, was there more to that reasoning than just that, or did you just feel that if you said you didn't want to be recognized for what
identified, by that completely in my life, yes.
Right. But was there more to that reasoning?
Yeah. There's a lot more to it. I mean, basically, we our goal was to create this organization that we thought in the future would bring about world change. I would be underground, developing kind of a people's army around the world. Actually, I was in the French Foreign Legion for a little while. I did a whole variety of things in Japan. I was all over the place. Anyways, I was supposed to, become something I thought I could never become.
Right.
And that was one of the major struggles, is with sort of the darkness within me and the darkness outside. And the light. So the story has it has a redemption quality to it, in that I had to struggle with all this darkness in order to accomplish this goal, and I decided I couldn't do it. I couldn't become what I was supposed to be, and I felt I was glad I stopped. And redeemed myself. On the other hand, I felt crushed because I had failed. I failed in my mission, and we were very, very mission oriented, and so the whole enterprise then was disbanded, and people went their separate ways. I still know all these people and what they're doing, and we're in connection. But the book is written so that people's identities are not evident. The names are changed to protect the innocent. Because, if people want to step forward and talk about it, I'm fine with that. But, I didn't feel right, exposing them to, they're all kind of old people like me now too, though I am kind of old, but I'm a mountaineer. I climb mountains. I do all kinds of other stuff. I'm pretty physical.
Oh, okay. And so, through all that, and backing out of possibly, well, I can't say. Well, I could say being famous for something that could have changed history a little bit. But you made the decision to let that go and rebuild yourself. And like I said, now you're a clinical psychologist, and you've been doing that for 30 years plus. And but before that, you were a professor, a supervisor, and explain a little bit more about that time.
You mean when I? This is like way after the disappearance. So yeah, I became.
I'm saying after the when you, in reference to like the time that you were a professor and supervisor.
Yeah, I was a professor. I taught at the doctoral level at the University of Wyoming, and I really enjoyed that. I published several papers. I were based on a famous philosopher. His name is Jürgen Habermas. He just passed away. I had a Fulbright where I worked with him briefly. And a lot of my publications were based kind of on his ideas of communicative action, of understanding and caring for others as the basis of kind of how we can maybe solve the world's ills. I applied this kind of psychologically, clinically. And from there, I got more and more into philosophy. I've always been into philosophy since I was, pretty young. I read, when I was a teenager, I read Freud and all kinds of stuff, and Zen, etc. I was pretty prolific. I went to a prep school, Deerfield Academy. I come from a lower middle class family. None of my family went past high school. I'm really kind of an anomaly. Didn't know what to do with me. Nobody knew what to do with me. I didn't have any guidance. There's some, a lot of darkness in my past. There's probably some sexual abuse, probably from my grandfather, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I had a very, I went to this prep school, and I was a poor kid, with all these rich people, and I got to really understand kind of how the world worked. That, the world was, these people there, the world was their oyster. They could do whatever they wanted, and they assumed they could do anything they wanted. Whereas I had had tremendous doubts about, accomplishing anything. Did well there, but I almost got through out of Deerfield a couple times for a variety of different reasons. I was pretty rebellious all the way through. This is kind of funny thing at Deerfield is in my senior year, we had a mock political convention. It was 1972. We had a senator from Alaska who was graveling, and I and another couple guys, we wanted to change the American Constitution to make it more liberal and a variety of different things. And we were thrown out of the convention.
Okay.
So the sense of being a revolutionary has always kind of been with me in my thinking and writing, and even at Hope College. That's the second where I went afterwards. I a number of people, we tried to start a do not vote campaign for the student council, because we thought they were just they were just lackeys for the administration. So anyways, that failed because they got the biggest vote ever because they forced people to vote. Anyways, that was kind of funny.
Okay. So
but anyways, back to being clinical psychologist. So yeah, I've written a lot. I got into philosophy. Actually, I do have another book out that's on Amazon. It's called The Mathematics of Existence. It's based on some theorems I and a mathematician developed that kind of prove the existence of the multiverse, where there's infinite number of dimensions and universes and realities and timelines. You kind of see a lot of this on TV, but it is really the predominant paradigm in modern physics and astrophysics. So we have a mathematical proof for that. The book is also a lot about a lot of other things too. So.
Okay. So this new book you just said is a mixture of a lot of explain it a little bit more again in reference
about this other book, the Mathematics of
the one you wanted to mention. Yes.
Yeah, it's a short book. It's basically kind of almost like a journal article. It talks about how everything is uncertain. It's based on It's based on Kurt Gödel's theorems of incompleteness and inconsistency. He was a mathematician at the time of Einstein. Actually, they were very good friends at Princeton, and he developed these two theorems of incompleteness and inconsistency. That basically say that everything in the universe, everything in existence is incomplete and inconsistent, that there is no completeness, that, basically that uncertainty and indeterminacy reigns. And we took this idea and we said, well, if we move this idea infinitely, like, let's say we look at our universe and we say, this universe is incomplete, it's inconsistent. What could make it more complete? Well, another universe. And then that universe, you have two universes. Well, there's still incompleteness. If you go this infinitely, you end up with an infinite number of universes and timelines. So we kind of prove this mathematically. And then we also developed another theorem called the theorem of boundary conditions that says in order for anything to exist, it must have boundaries. So there's always structure. There's always limitations. We don't fly. There aren't witches around us all the time, but maybe there are, but we can't see them. But anyway, so, our world has certain definitions, certain laws, but these can be bent and broken and be probabilistic. And so, kind of one of the things I've been into a lot is kind of looking at kind of how we have these infinite possibilities, like in the multiverse, but yet we are finite creatures. And so there's this kind of constant tension between the finite and the infinite. And a lot of modern physics is actually kind of about that, trying to make sense of, well, yeah, we have this finite universe, it has its laws, and yet we know there's all these infinite other possibilities and other universes. How does this all work? So.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble on.
No. Continue
I was a
on.
professor for many years, so I could,
Yeah.
I could run it on and on of this. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, continue on. No, that's fine. I wanted you to continue on in reference to it. Okay. So you mentioned in the other book, in reference to the disappearance, that you had interdimensional experiences. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This was not planned. I had, previous to this, I have had a number of different kinds of people might call spiritual experiences, in other dimensions, and but the disappearance was really a political act. It was not meant to be transcendental or spiritual or anything like that. But what happened is when I went out on the ice, what I planned, I would go out on the ice and plant my skis and then return and then start what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to go down to Mexico and join a dojo and learn martial arts and kind of proceed in my path as when the other people were supposed to proceed in their paths. But on the ice, when I got really far out in Lake Michigan, and I really kind of dissociated, and what happened was I kind of, I don't know, you might say bifurcated. I kind of entered to like two different timelines, which sort of fits in multiverse. I didn't know about the multiverse way back then, but I left. Part of me left the ice as my alias, Nathan T. Stanfield. That's who I was. After I disappeared, I left as Nathan T. Stanfield to start a revolution. But part of me kind of entered some interdimensional space. It's hard to describe because, language is really funny. It's very hard to describe things that are kind of almost ineffable or inexplainable or incomprehensible. Anyways, I was in this interdimensional space and I met these beings of light, kind of in this energy shell. There was this sort of communication through light and sound and other things that I didn't understand, but I felt like, you might say they were doing things to me. I think it was all positive, but like downloading information or something. I don't know. Anyways, this is, it's beyond our understanding. But I think one of the problems, people have a lot of what I call multiverse experiences or transcendental spiritual experiences, but how they're interpreted is really based a lot on your knowledge, your personal history, your culture. And then, that's why when somebody has one experience, they might experience seeing, for example, my experience, someone might see it, as being it's union with the Holy Spirit if they were Christian, and being with angels, or, they might see it that way or interpret it that way because that's how they see things. That's how you make sense of things, is based on what you know. And it gets projected into this, ineffable experience. Whereas somebody else who's shamanic or Hindu might see something very different. And I think the whole UFO thing, this is kind of interesting. I think, I believe there are extraterrestrials, in the universe, and also what I think of as super extraterrestrials who are kind of like maybe godlike in other dimensions. This is proof. This has to be because of the infinite quality of the multiverse. These things must exist. But how we interpret them can be very, very different, so that it has to do with culture.
Okay. All right. So, in reference to that, you told us in your words that that you believe that there are extraterrestrials out there, and ironically enough, this morning, on CBS Mornings, because I have my TV set on CBS. And so Eva Pilgrim was sitting in for Gayle King, and they do a little sidebar kind of thing called Talk of the Table. And so Eva's talk was about extraterrestrials.
Oh, wow.
and that 62% of Americans believe that they actually exist.
Yeah.
And that the government does not know it all.
Right.
So, in reference to your perspective of it,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts about how the government is working?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure what the government's about. I mean, there's lots of secrets in the government, and conspiracy. There's all kinds of things going on that we're not included in. So, who knows what they know and what they're, not letting us know. I think the thing with extraterrestrials is there's kind of, you might say, there's two ways of looking at them. One is that there are extraterrestrials who are in some sort of spaceship or something, and they're coming here and doing whatever they're doing. Okay, that's one version. Another version of extraterrestrials, which actually has a lot of support kind of in that community, is that extraterrestrials come from other dimensions. It's like they're moving in and out of our dimension, kind of like in Star Trek. They're kind of transporting back and forth. From another dimension, which is why we don't see them. And then if we look at it that way in terms of an interdimensional or dimensional experience where these beings are coming from some other dimension and influencing or coming into our dimension, our world, that fits in with a lot of what goes on in a lot of spiritual traditions, where people, enter other universes or other dimensions and meet all kinds of beings, or have all kinds of landscapes and worlds. Of course, it gets, like I said before, how that's interpreted has a lot to do with what, if you're from a tribal society, you're going to interpret it in one way versus a Christian versus a Buddhist. But I think what happens a lot is a lot of people are having abductions. That a lot of the abductions, again, I'm just hypothesizing, there may be real abductions happening by ETs flying with flying saucers or whatever. But I think a lot of the abductions could be interpreted as spiritual or transcendental experiences in these interdimensional worlds. So that, let's say let's say you know nothing about spirituality, you know nothing about the multiverse, you kind of don't know really much about your like most of us. If suddenly you're pulled into some interdimensional experience and you're meeting something, you're going to be pretty scared. And all that fear, all that paranoia and anxiety can be projected on your experience. So that maybe instead of seeing angels or beings of like I see, whatever, maybe you see demons and are trying to operate on you and put things in you. And there's a long tradition, for example, in shamanic literature where people go into these other dimensions worlds, and these beings do put things in you and do things, etc. And even Christianity, there can be a sense of the Holy Spirit coming in you, or maybe you meet something demonic and it's trying to do something to you. But this is happening in some interdimensional space, which I think is a little different. And so it's hard to know. I think both things may be happening, but I just wanted to just sort of focus a little bit on this sort of that a lot of the extraterrestrial experiences people are having, abductions, may be maybe really kind of not that much different than what people have been experiencing for tens of thousands of years across all kinds of cultures and religions. But now it's interpreted differently because we think scientifically. We think in terms of ETs, UFOs, flying saucers, etc. So that's how we make sense of it.
Okay. So, in your opinion, and this may not sound off the wall, but do you see a World War III coming that may involve aliens?
There's a lot written all about that. Let me give you my take on that. I believe that there are beings in other dimensions that are pretty powerful and kind of ineffable. We can't make sense of them scientifically, because science can't, we can't do experiments on them. One part of the problem with the multiverse and all these other worlds and dimensions is, we know they exist, but we don't have the technology to really explore them. The only way we can explore them is through our consciousness, is through our minds. And that's where the traditional spiritual methods of meditation, prayer, visualization come into place. And there's a lot of physicists who believe that these tools, these spiritual methods, activate a state of quantum consciousness, which enables us then to enter these other dimensions. And but is there are there forces, are there beings that we would call gods or super ETs? And science would kind of look at them as more super ETs that sometimes we'll understand or explain. Are they influencing what's going on in our in our world? I think that is happening. I think there are beings out there who are probably influencing us all in a lot of different ways. A way of thinking about it is like, if you were like a little blood cell in your body, and you had consciousness, you're a blood cell in your body and you're floating around and you had consciousness and you saw yourself as an individual blood cell, you might think you had some effect on whatever was going on around you as you traveled around, and you wouldn't realize that you were being influenced by all these other things in the body that you don't have any idea about. You'd be unaware of that.
Okay.
And that's kind of an analogy I might have. So do I think there's a World War III coming? I don't know. There's, throughout history, just has been a battle between good and evil, between authoritarianism and tyranny versus democracy and freedom. And, that's been going on forever, a lot of literature, sci-fi, fantasies about that. I was very influenced by Lord of the Rings. I read that. That was like a phenomenal book in my life. Dune, was, again, a big fan, still am a big fan of Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So now we're going to get to our questions.
Okay.
So our podcast has a number one fan, number one supporter, and she is a real life superheroine by the name of American Fox.
Howdy.
There we go. And she has some questions that were sent to you in advance.
Okay.
So the first question, we go back to the disappearance, back to 1978. And so the question is, how did you deal with losing time?
Yeah, that's a question. It's an interesting question. I don't think I lost time. I think my time expanded. Where, again, when I was planning my disappearance and I was on the ice, like I said, I had this interdimensional experience. And so my consciousness expanded in a way, and I had maybe time expanded in a certain way, ways I don't understand.
Okay.
So yeah, I and also, the story was, after I reemerged, was that I was amnesic, and I kept to that story. You believe it or not, in psychology textbooks, introductory psychology textbooks in college and abnormal psychology textbooks, I appeared in there as an example of amnesia. And I had to write to the authors and tell them, that was they couldn't put that in there because there was no evidence to support it. I wasn't psychologically tested or anything.
Right.
They did remove it, though I think it's gotten back in. Yeah. But that was it was very embarrassing. I was teaching an introductory psych course, and a student came up and said, "Hey, there's somebody with your name here in the book, Ed Amnesia. Is that you?" And I looked at them and I'm like, "What? How could that be me? Like, I'm a graduate student. Yeah, it couldn't be you." So anyways, I kind of got out of that. It's followed me at different times. Sometimes people that had discovered that about me and would talk to me about it. But like I said, I wanted to get the real story out. So yeah, time is I didn't really lose time. Again, the whole disappearance was very intentional. It just wasn't just me somehow disappearing and being amnesic for 15 months and not knowing what I was up to, because I knew exactly what I was doing and what we were doing as co-conspirators.
Okay. So you're saying during that time that you actually gained time. Do you feel like you gained time as yourself, or did you gain time as that other person that you were during that you disappeared?
Yeah, as Nathan T. Stanfield, that was my alias. I traveled to Mexico and had various shamanic experiences where I met a jaguar that tried to help me, because there were I got involved with some brujos who were kind of like you might say dark shamans, and I'd escaped from that, and there was a lot of kind of work. It's all in the book, but I had to deal with this sort of being, this sort of archetypal being I called the Dark Monk, who was very kind of ruthless and all about power, and the ends justifies the means, and and he was this being was trying to kind of mentor me and bring me into that kind of darkness, and eventually I did reject it completely. Like I said, that's sort of the redemption quality, is I got to see that violence and all that kind of stuff is wrong. And so ever since I've reemerged, I've believed in nonviolence, and we need to change and do things, but nonviolently, and we need to be as transparent and as open as possible, which is what I've tried to be in this book. So I don't know if I answer your question.
Okay. Well, it kind of. All right. So question number 2 from American Cox was this: what inspires you to move forward?
That's a great question. I think I've talked a little bit about that already. I think what helps me move forward is like two things. One is my curiosity about existence. I've always been curious. Even when I was young, I was writing all kinds of things and reading books, and so now I'm kind of into this multiverse theory that we've been talking about. Again, which is supported, it's kind of a mainstream theory almost. There are different versions of it. There's lots of arguments about, what version of the multiverse you have. But I've been very curious about existence, but not just in an academic or intellectual way. I made it a point in my life to figure out ways and experiment and traverse the multiverse, enter other dimensions through meditation and other means. Visualization, and to study these methods. And right now I have another book I have finished. It's called The Multiverse Guides Humanity in 23 Principles, The Optimal Life, The Ending of Freedom from Certainty, and Traversing the Multiverse. So that's what that book is about. Hopefully I'll be getting a publisher on that sometime soon.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's one. The second thing is, that's been important to me is wellness. Is the wellness of my patients. So I became a psychologist, so my patients can get better, and also I get them to look at kind of not just their own individual issues, but what's going on socially and systemically. Because lots of times psychologists have a tendency to blame the individual for everything, and it's not the individual; it's what's going on around them. They've got an abusive manager at work. They've all kinds of things. The other thing I've been working on is kind of the wellness of our planet. So what's been going on in the kind of our physical and environmental ecosystems, our political and economic ecosystems. All kinds of areas of wellness, and of course, what's going on economically isn't so great these days, clearly.
Oh, okay. In reference to staying in this area, have you looked at this going forward spiritually as well?
Yeah. I mean, being, spiritual wellness is very important. I think the more we can connect with everything around us, the healthier we are. One of the things we know in psychology is the more connected you are to people, the environment, the transcendental. Generally, the happier you are, the more meaningful your life is, and the more psychologically stable, in fact, physically healthy you are. So, the more connections we have, and the multiverse is all about making more connections, because it has all these infinite connections, and we know through connecting, we develop, we become happier and more positive. It's when we reduce our connections, negative feelings, chronic negative feelings like anger and rage, and only reduce our connections. And by reducing our connections, we become less adaptable. If we only have a few connections, we only have a few ideas, then we can't adapt as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I go ahead and finish off your sentence.
So the problem is that we need to expand and connect more, and so religious spirituality is all about connecting. Humanists, you might say, if who might not believe in spiritual or the transcendental, still, you can still connect. The more you connect with the environment and everything, then usually the better people are. It's when people get more isolated that they get crazier. I mean, we've seen people get incredibly violent and kill people. And, when you look at these people, they're always usually very isolated people. And the lack of connection, it only leads to depression and anxiety, and then of course can lead to anger and rage, and put those together, and suddenly you have a mass murderer. And we know that in the world is becoming more divisive. It's not a good thing. We need to connect more. We need to understand and try to accept one another. And not be so divisive. And I think rage and anger that we're seeing politically and in the world only makes us more isolated and less more unhappy, and obviously leads to tremendous amounts of suffering.
Okay, so let's take. I apologize for cutting you.
No, fine, that's fine.
Earlier, because you were touching a subject that's actually coming to me in reference to me now, because I'm in this phase where I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression in 2009. Okay, and so I have kind of somehow I picked up traits that I didn't know that I was doing to people. I didn't realize that I was hurting people. I didn't realize that I was controlling them. I didn't realize, rushing wise, I knew a little bit, but in reference to controlling and pushing and rushing, I've gotten to a point where now I want to be the self-isolation, where I don't want to deal with anyone. I don't want to, because I'm afraid of hurting more people than I've done. I'm afraid of anything good that I think that could happen to me won't, in reference to it. Okay. So in connection to this, where do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I think, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you feel, you've been hurting others and, bad things are happening, being over controlling, and, one way to deal with that is to become, more isolated or, more in your own world, that is a possibility. That is sort of a solution. The problem with that solution is that it leads to despair, and it leads to resignation, and probably even more unhappiness and more anxiety and perhaps more depression. And so that is avoidance is a mechanism that, is what it's the basis of anxiety and to some degree depression. And by avoidance, we don't deal with all our connections with the people around us. And so we never work through them and develop a sense of connection and mastery over what's going on. So it's like if somebody's afraid of a spider, they have some kind of arachnophobia. Avoiding the spiders is not going to cure you, but if you take step by step and connect and approach a spider, et cetera, follow this whole line, then through exposure, then you gain some mastery, and pretty soon you can be around spiders. And I think who we are. We're all flawed human beings. That's one of the things, and Gödel talks about, and what I write about in the is we are flawed. We are fundamentally flawed. We are incomplete. We are insufficient. We are inadequate. There is no certainty. And we need to accept that in ourselves and accept that others are also like this. And together we can help one another. So, you're very brave and talking about this. But I think if you let people know this and tell them, I think people will connect with you. People will say, yeah, I feel the same way. I'm kind of fucked up, and I this and that. And
we have a different language because it's on TV.
Yeah. We're all kind of screwed, but how can we help one another? How can we connect? How can we, build bridges? And, this show you have is a way of building bridges. This is one of your ways of connecting people to one another and connecting them with you. I think it's fantastic.
Okay. And folks, I do want to apologize. He did slip a word that that came out. That's why I was trying to catch him quick enough on it. So I do apologize that it slipped because, like I said, it is going to be on TV.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's right. Like I said, we just make a notation to that.
Oh, okay, you can do
it.
Whatever. Yeah, when I'm talking with patients, we talk pretty frankly with one another. I apologize. Sometimes I kind of slip in that mode. I apologize.
No, and that's all right. And at the same time, I explained to him in the beginning this is more of a conversation type form. So I could understand it slipping out. So like I said, it's just an edit. So that's not much of a big thing. It's only one time.
I will mind my manners.
It like I said, it happened. So it's no biggie. And like I said, it can be understood.
Sure.
In reference to it. So yeah. So in reference to me, like I said, I'm at the point where I actually literally, Steven, I literally dissolved the word friend. I don't believe in friends. I don't. And here's why I don't. Because when I've asked, now, I mean, I made some exceptions. There are some exceptions. There are some people that have been supporting me. But it's like I'm okay with saying friend to that. Like if you're there and you're physically supporting me, or you're physically there with me, hanging around, I'm not saying being there 24/7, but like if hanging out like in Atlantic City or hanging out at a bar or something. If you're hanging out with me physically, then I could say a friend. But if you turn around, you're not around me. You're doing your best to support me, but it's not. You're just not physically with me. That's where I dissolve the friendship part. Because to me, there has to be some physicalness to it. Okay? Because of that, yeah, like you said earlier, it may lead to more despair, more anxiety, more depression. Yes. I have come across to the point where I will complain that I'm lonely, but then I will complain that I don't have what I need to overcome the loneliness. So it's like I'm complaining for almost no reason.
Well, I don't think you're complaining. I think we're very visceral creatures. We're physical creatures, and touching somebody, being in physical presence with people is very important because we're not bots, okay? We're physical creatures, and we need that physicality. Intimacy is all about physicality, and we're not robots, we're not bots, and we need physical connection. And without physical connection, actually, people suffer tremendously. There's all kinds of, there's tremendous amount of literature on this, that physical touches, especially, like with kids who, are born, if they don't get any physical touch, it can lead to all kinds of problems.
Right.
This is why people who are adopted are in orphanages where there's been no touching or anything, and then there are difficulties later on around attachment issues and stuff. Yeah. So touch is incredibly important, and so and a lot of relationships have kind of a functional quality. They're only I was at the universities, and I have friends there, and as soon as I'm not at the university, we're no longer friends, or they just sort of disappear. It's pretty hard to have friends that cut across kind of functions that we're involved in, and those are the kind I think are the real friends we have. Right. And they're we connection. But I think another problem is that nowadays people are treating friends like commodities. And there was an old kind of psychoanalytic term called commodity fetishism, where commodities are used to fill the emptiness inside. And I think we've been, slowly moving more in that direction. And it's kind of hard, who are you going to be with? Well, this person's smarter, they have more money, so I'm going to dump this person and be with this person. It all has this kind of commodity quality to it. And of course, that's not good. That, then everything seems manipulative. Everything seems to be about getting ahead. And this, gets into this, like what I call extreme individualism, which is very detrimental to connecting and community. because we are fundamentally social creatures. That's how we survive. We are social creatures.
Right.
And then from our social foundations, we can self-express and create, but our foundation is social. And then, with the right social foundations, people can be very creative and very successful. Sometimes people overcome all kinds of hardships too, but without that foundation, it's pretty hard. And when that foundation is pretty messed up, it can lead to, all kinds of narcissism and sociopathy and all the kind of things you were talking about.
Right. Yeah. In reference to foundation, I mean, the foundation that I have are now more distanced than local, per se. I mean, they're there for me. They want to be there for me. But like in reference, and I only have a couple minutes, and I still have one more question from American Fox to bring out real quick as well. So to be quick with it. The one is so very far that, I mean, they want to be a part. They want to be, but I'm preventing them because I'm like this. I dissolve the word friendship because you're not here, physically. You're not here to hang out with me or spend time with me. Yes, you're supporting me. Okay, I can give you that credit, but I'm like the old Al Jarreau song, all or nothing at all.
No, I get that. I just recently got married last August.
Yeah.
Remarried. And there's an extremely old friend of mine, one of my oldest friends, and she was not going to come out to the wedding. And, I don't see her that often, every now and then, but I was about ready to end the relationship at that. Yeah. And, we had a frank conversation and she came out, and it was that connecting physically, being in the same place, that's so important, and I think has really enriched our relationship. We've gotten a lot closer. I've been to see her a few back and forth, and and I think it was a good thing. And I think if you do have friends who are long distance, she's in Massachusetts, I'm here in Seattle. It's important to meet with people physically at times. And if you don't, things just kind of start going south and become like you were talking about.
Yeah, like wanting to just be in isolation. All right, so the last question from American Fox that we have is this. What's one of your greatest accomplishments? And we have about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer that kind of in an abstract way. I don't mean to, because it's kind of, when I look at all my life, it's kind of hard to focus on any one thing. So what I would say is my lifelong ability to reinvent and redeem myself. And especially the last one, I've had lots of, different relationships and this and that, and, been clobbered over the head with 2x4s to change. And, and I have changed because I've been clobbered over the head by 2x4s.
Wow.
And I hopefully am becoming a better person and a caring person. But, it takes, it's a long lifetime, endeavor of reinventing and redeeming. So, and my Disappearance is really about an attempt to reinvent myself, become this sort of so-called revolutionary with my co-conspirators. And then in the process, there's this redemption story of me, finally pushing, rejecting the rage and the anger and violence and all that, as not a way of means to helping others, which, one of the reasons I got into psychology was to be really helpful to others at an individual level. And now I'm kind of getting back into more systemic issues, a lot bigger philosophy issues on the multiverse. And I'm also writing something on planetary economics and governance for Earth, Moon, and Mars. So I'm kind of getting into bigger things because I'm trying to, be helpful. Sorry.
Okay. All right. And so how can people reach out to you, Steven?
They can reach out to me through my website, stevenkubacki.com. I'm not hard to find. You can always email me, I'm not that hard to find. Facebook, I don't know, variety of different things. So.
All right. So go to stevenkubacki.com and reach out to him if you have any questions. American Fox, thank you as always for the questions you send. And so my last question, we have like 2 minutes.
Okay.
Where do you see and I know you just mentioned what you're doing now. Where do you see yourself within 5 years?
That's really hard. I see myself probably retiring as a psychologist. I see myself writing more, and I want to get out into the world more politically, in some way. I don't know. This sounds kind of weird, but I still believe in kind of changing and transforming society, and I want to be involved in that in some way, which is why I'm writing. That's my way of trying to contribute. But hopefully, in some way, maybe I get involved, in a more real way other than kind of writing books. So that's kind of what and then of course I enjoy being in the mountains, mountaineering, climbing, and connecting with the transcendental, with the multiverse. That's a very important part of me. Okay.
All right. Well, Steven, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. You're welcome to come back on at any time. Just, reach out to me. We'll make that happen.
Well, thank you.
And everybody, thank you for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.